Thank you for joining us for All Things MSP Live. My name is Eric Anthony. I'll be your host tonight, and we really do appreciate you spending some time with us. Now, you may be asking, what is All Things MSP? We are a community, first and foremost, of MSPs and people around the MSP industry, vendors, subject matter experts, all that kind of stuff, and we're talking about the non-technical side of being an MSP. Now, most of our activity happens in our Facebook group. That's the platform that we've been on the longest. You can join us there at facebook.com/groups/all-things-MSP. There's about 6,000 members in the group, and somebody is there waiting to talk to you. And we also, if you don't do Facebook, we have a LinkedIn company page. So you can go to linkedin.com/company/all-things-MSP. Now, last but not least, we also have a YouTube channel. So you can head on over there. This is where you can probably get the best experience watching the live stream because it allows us to interact better through the comments there. But also, we publish a weekly podcast there as well, in addition to publishing it to all of your favorite podcast platforms. But we also post other pieces of content as well. So make sure you go there, you like, you subscribe, you do all the things to make sure you get notified so that you'll know when we post new podcasts, as well as we're doing a new live stream. Now, the live stream is typically every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We try not to miss it, but sometimes life happens. Okay, we got about 19 seconds left before we start the show. We'll see you there. The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of its participants and do not reflect the views and opinions of any employer, MSP, sponsor, advertiser, or vendor. Hey there, All Things MSP crew. Welcome back to another All Things MSP Live. So happy that you're here with us tonight. We have a great episode. We have Dean Trempelas tonight from 𝗵𝗶. We're going to talk about hiring. And if I know Dean, it might get a little spicy because he's probably really well known for his Spicy Monday videos that he posts every week. So, I just love those videos and I watch them every single week. And if you're in this industry, you probably should too. Lots of great information, as well as his unique spin on the MSP industry. Now, tonight's sponsors are 𝗵𝗶. If you have migrations to do and what MSP doesn't, you need a tool like 𝗵𝗶. Now, 𝗵𝗶 is great for not only moving files, but also moving email and calendars, stuff like that from all of those Microsoft 365, Google Workspace accounts, things like that. And the thing I like about them most is they really put a lot of effort into how it works from a logistics standpoint. So they do a lot to make sure that you can preview kind of how the migration is going to go and if there might be any hiccups in kind of the pre-flight checklist. And then during the migration, they've got some really great proprietary technology on the back end that helps them move very, very smoothly, as well as do deltas, which we all know can help in that migration process. We're also sponsored tonight by CoreView. If you're managing 365 tenants, and really who isn't in this industry, this is a tool that you can use to template your configurations and make sure, and I think this is probably the really important part, make sure that your tenants, your tenant configurations are not drifting, because things happen over time. And if you don't know, you may be out of compliance. It may open up some type of breachable hole, that you just don't want. So check out CoreView at atmsp.link/CoreView. And of course, it wouldn't be an ATMSP live stream without mentioning 𝗁𝗁𝗏's podcast. So the IT Business podcast is at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can go check that out. He's on YouTube. You can probably find it over on LinkedIn as well. His episode tonight titled Merry New Year. Very apt. So 𝗁𝗁𝗏, we look forward to seeing you over there. All right. Without further ado, I am going to go ahead and bring up Dean so we can chat about some hiring. That doesn't look good. Let's fix that. There we go.
How you doing, Eric?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to bring you up in the little screen over there. Maybe it was just you were just too spicy.
I need
in the
to know
beginning.
my place.
So for the people who don't know you, kind of tell us the really quick journey of how you got here.
I am just some guy that started posting a lot on the internet, specifically on Reddit, and somehow that landed me on a camera. And, you know, along the way, spent a fair amount of time as an MSP service and operations manager and got to learn from lots of wonderful people in this space. So now I try to pay it forward.
And that's what a lot of us are trying to do, right? We're really trying to just make the space better, because it's and we might get a little off topic tonight. I'm just going to warn everybody, because Dean and I, we really met in person for the first time at IT Nation. And we must have talked for almost an hour, like the first time we met.
I'm embarrassed to say that I did not know who in-person Eric was. I only knew internet Eric, and it took me way longer than I'd like to admit before I connected the dots between actual meet space you and digital you. So I apologize.
No, that's okay. It's because I'm very introverted by nature. Even though I do a live stream like this and I do the podcast and everything else that I do, it's kind of weird when people do meet me in person, because I tend to be a little bit more introverted in person.
I didn't get that at all. You were pretty friendly.
Well,
it's always funny to me. Introverts always say that. They're like, I'm introverted. And I think my expectation is that means you'll crawl in a corner and cry. And like, you're talking to me right now. How is that introverted?
Well, that's true. That's true. Well, I do like to talk. So, but anyway, we want to talk about hiring tonight. And I think this is a great topic. And I think I mentioned this in the little preview that I did, that it's really something that is coming of age almost in the MSP world, because for so long, MSPs were all these really small businesses that we didn't hire that often. But now I think two things have happened. We have matured as an industry, and so we're having to hire more, but we're also finding that a lot of the skill sets that we need to hire for are harder to find.
They are. And I would add on to that, by maturing as an industry, our hiring pool went from only a very particular type of person to really any IT professional. And the rest of the industry, the IT industry, was ready for us to join them. I don't know that we were ready to join the rest of that pool party and really be effective at hiring this wider talent pool. So it's a topic I love talking about, because every single person who is watching this has this problem. There's not a soul, an MSP, a vendor, a VAR that does not have challenges around hiring. So,
because hiring is hard, because it's about people, and quite often it's about people that you don't know. And so there are just weird dynamics when it comes to hiring. And so many MSPs don't have a process for hiring, and that even makes it harder.
Well, and not only that, what'd you start off the beginning of this call saying? You basically said, I'm introverted, so I think sometimes, even though I like talking, I'm a little awkward. Not to stereotype, what are most, at least first and second generation MSP owners? Introverted nerds who probably don't have a professional background in HR and hiring, and yet suddenly now as a business owner, you're thrust into having to learn to basically make a friend in 5 minutes, maybe over camera. Like, it's not a skill set that a lot of the executives in our industry really grew up having, and now they have to do it. And you kind of can't get it wrong, or your business will suffer.
So let's kind of make this a little more practical for people, and say, where should we start when it comes to thinking about hiring? We're just a guy or a gal in an office, we're doing IT work for a couple of small businesses, and we are suddenly out of capacity and we need to go hire somebody. What do we think of first?
Well, actually, you kind of already said it. Are we out of capacity or are we out of availability? Because they're related, but they're different. And the way you would hire for those two things is different. And the way you would approach it is different. And I think right there is where a lot of organizations of all sizes hit their first stumbling block. We haven't actually figured out what business problem we're trying to solve.
So what is the business problem we're trying to solve, Dean?
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. So like if it's a solopreneur we're talking about, is the issue that there are not enough hours in the week to get to all the work, which I doubt, or is the issue that solopreneur can only be in one place at one time, which is an availability issue? And well, basically supplying availability is somewhat theater. I don't need somebody who has my skill set to create the illusion of availability. But a solopreneur might start off and think, well, I need someone who can do everything I can do because I need to clone myself. No, you don't. You just simply need to have somebody that can go and stand in and take over some of the things you're doing so you can be somewhere else. Whereas Amanda's in the chat, a more established MSP like that, well, she might be hiring for capacity because she simply does need to add more hours in the week for more work to be done. So you got to figure that out first. What are you hiring for? And if you say both, I have bad news. That's not possible. You cannot hire for both the same person.
Right. Because there's a skills difference, right, between availability and capacity. And what are your thoughts, and this could get a little spicy, what are your thoughts on trying to use systems instead of people to solve the availability problem?
If we were to go and grab any number of the people pushing into our industry right now with AI will solve this front end of your service delivery challenge, they would basically say, solve it with AI. And someday that may be true. But as it currently stands, and this is not an MSP thing, you cannot properly meet an availability metric without bodies. There's no way around it. And if you do want to try to limit the bodies, I'll give a really good example everyone here would relate to. A common industry that has to staff by availability, not capacity, is a call center. And so if you call right now, if we called your ISP, I don't even know who they are, but if we called your ISP and said that you're having a problem with your modem, we're both smart. If we started that call off by saying, listen, we've already rebooted it. We have already made sure it's getting a signal. We've logged into it to check that it's getting at least 0 dB at the DMARC from the company. So just send out a tech with a new unit. What's the first thing that person on the other end would say after they let you finish talking? Okay, well, first thing I need you to do is walk over to the modem and I need you to read the number, and they're going to make you go through the script anyways, because the only way you can possibly control availability is you somehow then have to gate how those people who are staffing the availability are able to work through something. And we do that typically through scripting. We do that in a theme park with a queue. Humans don't really like that. We're not a big fan of that. So generally speaking, you really can't circumvent availability with a tool or a process. You might be able to make it a little better, but you really can't eliminate it. And that's why most MSPs don't actually really end up staffing for availability. Most of us staff for capacity, and we will represent the illusion of availability by having something like a customer portal, an email connector that if you email in, auto responds. Maybe we have 1 or 2 people that answer the phone for us, and we've matched that with our volume so clients get the impression whenever they call, the phone gets picked up. Perhaps you hire an outsourcing provider like my buddies at Helped or someone else who then stands in for you in the front. But that's really all theater. It's sort of creating something that gives the impression of availability. Actual availability you really can only solve with bodies. And that's why it's important to figure out what you're solving for to begin with. Is this a capacity or an availability issue?
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I started 2 IT businesses in my past. I had one I started so long ago, MSP wasn't a thing. We didn't even call it break fix because we didn't have to make a demarcation. We were literally just IT consultants or computer guys, right? And then later on, I had my MSP. But in both circumstances, I hired an admin first because I could train that admin to do that availability theater.
It is generally an easier skill set to initially hire for. It becomes a more challenging skill set to scale. If we go to the opposite end of the MSP, like towards my ending time in an MSP when we were well over 300 employees, that now has to become a strategic business unit. That's where we start having a first call resolution team, or an entire live answering department. And it becomes complicated then. But until that point, you're right that it is easier. You ever go to a drive-through and the person there is just so good at customer service, you're like, I want to hire them. Well, there you go. Like, that's the person right there. It's easy at a small scale to find people that are excellent at presenting on, in person or over a phone, who maybe don't know too much about computers.
Yeah, you just reminded me of a great story. This was from a Robin Robbins boot camp, I think, and this was probably like 8 years ago. Okay,
no one was.
There were half a dozen vendors. Okay, sitting in the Waffle House across the street from the Sheraton, I think, kind of by the airport in Nashville. And the guy behind the counter at Waffle House, and this is like 2:00 in the morning. This is after we've been downtown Nashville and we're coming back, right? So we're all three sheets to the wind. And we're all trying to hire this guy because he's just got that personality, right? Just a hilarious story. And you had to be there to really enjoy it. But, another one of those stories from the road.
Well, it's actually a good example. If you're listening to this and it's not quite clicking for you what the difference is, because they are similar. If you think of a sit-down restaurant, so like pick like like an Olive Garden, like some sort of restaurant that has a sit-down premise. When you go in there, the back of house, so the kitchen, all that prep, maybe if they have like a host or a hostess, that is capacity staffing. That has to be staffed for a certain amount of planned capacity based on the number of maximum guests that can be served during a particular service. So that is a capacity metric. And in fact, the number of tables in the restaurant are also literally a capacity metric. But the wait staff, it's not one-to-one. We don't have one waiter or waitress per table, right? And so the wait staff and then your ability to walk in and be seated are an availability metric. You can only be seated if a table is available. And the restaurant does not have control over availability, nor do you at your MSP. That's one of the problems with why availability costs bodies. So at a restaurant, the way we manage that is we have a ratio of wait staff to tables. There's an implied understanding that while you're going to get a quality of service, it will not be one-to-one. You will have to wait. And there's things like reservations. There's maybe you get a little buzzer. There are systems in place that we have learned. And that's basically a way the restaurant is managing that availability metric for us. And if you can figure out a way to do all that at your MSP and keep your clients happy, that's awesome. But a lot of us can't. And a lot of our clients don't want, a lot of your clients don't want to take a number and wait until the buzzer goes off. And so that's where this gets really tricky. And that is why generally MSPs will skew towards capacity staffing. Let's make sure I have enough chefs so that everyone who is able to be seated, which is the only amount I'll allow in, can always eat.
So then if we're going to help MSPs here, what are some of the indicators that we can look at or that we're going to see bubbling up in our business that tell us we have an availability problem or a capacity problem?
That's a really interesting question. And there are a number of factors you can look at. No one factor is an indicator perfectly by itself. And I would also point out the specific business model you have and the cadence of support you have with your clients also plays a big impact. If you are an MSP that has set a tone that if I email, call, or chat, someone will respond quickly, that's what I call an implied SLA. That's very hard to back out of. So you're kind of stuck a little bit catering towards an availability metric. If you're an MSP that has more of a dispatch model where I am not programmed to go direct to a tech or a technical resource, and I am used to having something being scheduled and you calling me back, you have set yourself up more for a capacity metric. So right off the top, that's a decent idea. But from there, well, clients tend to complain in real time about a lack of perceived availability. They tend to complain afterwards, so sort of reactively in a QBR or CSAT about capacity. And so if you look at where you're getting client feedback or complaints around quality, speed, and effectiveness of service, where it's coming in the service cycle can be a really good indicator where your clients perceive there to be an issue. If every time I call in, I feel like I have to wait in line, no one's ever ready for me. By the time I get somebody, they don't seem to know what I'm talking about. I say things like that, and I tend to complain as I'm calling in, as I'm emailing in. I'm frustrated with the perception of availability at your MSP. If, on the other hand, I am filling out a CSAT when the survey's done and I'm saying this took a little longer than I wanted, or I'm a little disappointed they got Eric on this, Matt Fox would have been a better tech, I prefer him, that is more skewed probably towards mismanagement of capacity.
Okay.
Did you want KPIs, or is that a good answer?
No. I think that's enough. Like, we're trying to keep it simple here, right? We don't want to get too complicated, too much in the weeds, because I'm sure that that's a lot of the content that you are starting to create for Empath, correct?
I literally wrote out a script earlier this week for a course on capacity versus availability. That was not planned. It's just a topic that I'm passionate about. And it's funny because in my last role over at Helped, that's literally like, if you have an outsourcing vendor and that outsourcing vendor is skewing either towards proactive or like sort of invisible outsourcing, or they're doing front of reactive outsourcing, like call answering, they are basically providing either availability or capacity to you. And some that offer both are providing both. That's the whole business model for most outsourcing providers, is determining which of those metrics you're lagging in and then creating a value proposition to try and help offset that for you. So,
okay. So we've established that the first part is finding out if you have an availability or a capacity problem.
yes.
Next step, we actually have to go look for people. So how do we start looking for people?
Oh, this is fun. This is the part that gets overthought and underthought quite a bit. And I find it really, really fun. And it is probably the single area of this whole process that if you change nothing other than this, you'll have the biggest impact overall on your hiring experience. Couple of thoughts I would put out there. So you got to start by having some sort of job posting, right? You need an advertisement. And that's the first place a lot of MSPs screw up. They put a job description out there, not an advertisement. If we were at a Robin Robbins show right now and we were talking about finding prospects, what would Robin say? Don't write up a website or a list of all the services you provide. Go and sell your value to the prospects, so the prospects will want to engage with you and align it with the prospect persona you're targeting, right? Basic sales and marketing. Exact same thing with hiring. And a lot of MSPs don't. They do the sales and marketing equivalent, just putting a list of services like on an MSA and just being like, there you go. That's not attractive. And it misses the mark beyond the fact that it's not really the smartest way to approach it. It misses the mark in sort of the shift that's happened in employee culture over the last 20 years that we tend to see in a lot of small business owners, especially, and being a little ageist, especially if you're sort of later Gen X, or older than that. The employment world that type of a person grew up in is different than it is now. This isn't an internet convo. It's just the dynamic between I go get a job at a company and that is my career now. I'm going to stay there. And as long as I'm loyal, that company will take care of me until I die. That is no longer employee culture and hasn't been for probably since the late 90s. A lot of entrepreneurs, especially on that older side, still approach it like it is. They tend to come in with this idea that a job is a gift. I am doing you a favor by offering it. You need to sell yourself to me. This is only about me. And so sell me. And movies meme this, all the job hunting myths meme this. That's not how it works anymore. That's a part of it.
Right.
But that job description versus an advertisement, which is really what you want to put out there, shows that different perspective. Your job here is to sell your company and why I should come work for it. And importantly, to communicate that advertisement to attract a particular type of person. Because
it's just like creating an ICP for your marketing.
Exactly. Yes, it's exactly like that. And here's the part that's kind of fun where that all goes. Eric, you are not capable, as great as you are, of managing every possible human that comes in the door. There are going to be personalities or types of people that you are the deficit, not them. And as a hiring manager, if you could have that light bulb moment that it's not that I hire staff that are bad or some of my staff are toxic or, whatever we're going to call it, that, oh, I am not actually capable of getting a decent output from every type of human. I'm just not. That is an illumination moment. And if you can have that, and now you go back to that job advertisement and you think about writing it to attract the human that you are able to work with. My friends, that means everybody who applies that you end up talking to already has a greater chance of being successful to you than the old style of doing this. So I think if you hear this and you're willing to accept that you're not good at managing every type of person, you will not get the best out of everybody. I'm from New England. I love the Patriots. I love me some Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick could not get Tom Brady performance out of every QB that came later, even though he is one of the best coaches in NFL history. Not all of them were somebody he could coach. It's that. And if you can learn that, well, let's focus on the people you can coach.
Yeah. And in today's environment, that's actually more important because it's more about culture than ever before, because all of those things, because, you're triggering me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Cause I'm one of those Gen X that you're talking about.
I know.
And it really does have to change in terms of how you are literally marketing yourself to these job prospects, because it's so much more competitive out there today than it's ever been.
So I have a fun, mildly offensive analogy I like to use that most people can relate to. Let's say you've reached that point in your life where you're like, I need a serious relationship with another human. I'm looking for a husband or a wife or a partner. And you go to the bar. Don't go to the bar to find a life partner, but you go to the bar. It's last call. The lights come on and you're looking at everybody in the room. Would you shop for a life partner like that? Would you go in there and be like, all right, whoever's here and is willing to walk out the door with me, that's who I'm going to try to marry? Probably not. That's probably not how most of us would approach that. Maybe we try that during dating and we get burned a few times and realize that's not a good move. But eventually most of us learn that's not how we pick a permanent or long-term relationship. And we're more likely to go out and try and find somebody that has overlapping values, maybe some overlapping interests, and try to align myself with a person where, whether we're happy or we're upset, we'll be able to make it work. Yeah, but Marv, you didn't wait till last call and throw a dart and the first person that hit was who you took home, I'm hoping. Otherwise, you were very lucky. But in hiring, what tends to happen a lot, not just at MSPs, is we put out a job posting. We don't give a lot of thought to who it's going to attract. It is last call at the bar. The lights go on and we just kind of interview whoever looks like they're least likely to steal our kidneys from that lineup. And it works out sometimes, but there's not a lot of strategy there. And if you thought about it more, that like, well, wouldn't I rather have a nice conversation with someone for an hour? And then if we got along, maybe that's the person that I see again for another date. Maybe that's a better way to start a relationship than, all right, whoever's left that doesn't have an obvious pocket knife and, some weird Eastern European guy with a cooler standing near them, I'll take them home. It's the same idea with hiring. And now imagine that you took that old school mentality where at last call, those people had to sell themselves to you. Like, it's even more crazy because now you're taking a pool of people who probably aren't already a good fit and now encouraging them to lie to pretend they're a good fit because you're basically desperate. That probably isn't a great strategy in romance. And it definitely isn't a good strategy in hiring.
Desperation is never a good strategy. Okay. So we've gotten to the pickup point, I guess we'll call it. What about now? Let's transition to the dating or interviewing part. What are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen MSPs do during the interview process?
Well, so let's bring that for a second back to the job advertisement or the job posting. That job advertisement or posting needs to genuinely sell to me what working for you and your company is. And so you really need to think of it as, this is my first chance to really saturate people with culture and what it's like to be here. But secondly, you need to start it off by listing the things that are actually most critical to being a quality employee in that role. And that is not Windows server experience or familiarity with, Mac OS or printers. Those are skills. Like, you are looking for specific things. And a lot of us will then say, fine, communication, a desire to succeed. That's garbage. Everybody can do that. And everybody fails at that. Specifically, 5 bullet points. What are the top 5 things in order of most important to least important that a human must be able to do or embody to have a chance of being excellent at your organization? You have to start it that way. You're selling it to somebody and you're speaking to them. Assuming you've done that, 2 other suggestions. Always put the salary and the range in the posting. Stop playing games. I cannot communicate this enough. Hiring managers, you are not funny or clever by playing interview games, and employees, you are not funny or clever by playing them either. It is nonsense. If we go back to the dating example, nobody wants games played there. Don't play them here. Be forthright and upfront about the range or the salary you're hiring for. That's a benefit. If you're worried that what you're offering is too low to attract somebody, yeah, it probably is. And lastly, and they'll come back to why that was important in a second, throw an Easter egg somewhere randomly into the job description. Put in some sort of really small, subtle joke that someone would have to read it to see. So, like, I'm a big fan of, in the skills section, where you put all those dry, drab skills of putting one in that's like a desire to hate printers or something like that, that somebody could easily skip over. What I'm looking for is, when I get to that first round or that screening, I want to see if anybody mentions it to me during the screening that stood out to them. And I'll actually ask them about that. So when we get to the interview thing, I'll explain that. There's actually a little bit of like tactical strategy to that to vet out people that are wasting your time.
I can definitely see how that would fit in, because you're making sure that people actually read the stinking job description and they're just not adding you to the list of companies that they're trying to get a job at just because they need a job. Well,
so the most common tool you're going to use for hiring, unless you basically have a direct referral from someone else, which can be wonderful, is probably going to be Indeed. And if you are approaching this now with a mindset that somebody who works anywhere could work for me, which is not a requirement, and you are not a bad company if you only want local talent, that is perfectly fine. You're just limiting your options. There's nothing wrong with that. You are not obligated to offer remote work. But if you do choose to offer remote work, because pragmatically it makes your life easier, when you're doing that, use some strategy. If you go to post a job on a site like Indeed and you're going to say that it's remote work or hybrid work, where you post the job is going to have a massive impact on the initial candidate pool that's going to see that. So if I posted it, I'll give an example at Help, because we hired a lot of remote people there. If I was going to hire somebody where I really don't care where they are, as long as they're in the United States, then I may not set a host city location. I may post it as a pure remote job, and wherever you apply from, I don't care. I am giving up control of time zone. I am giving up my ability to enforce work-life balance. I am giving up my ability to not be caught up later by an employee feeling that they have to start too early or too late. So you lose some things there, but I'll have a very wide pool. Alternatively, I will target a specific city or region that has a demographic that I know is likely to be interested in the role, looking for an opportunity to move their career forward that they can't get in that demographic, that can then work for me remotely in my time zone. And so you can use either strategy. When you do, though, either way, you're going to get a lot of responses, because people tend to spam apply on sites like Indeed. And it's very quick. You can get 50, 60, 100, 200 response, very overwhelming. And if you're not getting that kind of response, go back to your job advert. It's not written well. because you should be overwhelmed. You should be overwhelmed and annoyed, and a lot of it will be low quality, but you should be getting a lot. Well, at that point, you have all these applicants. What do you do? Like, how do you're not going to read 200 resumes. No one's doing that. That's nonsense. So how do you even figure out what to do next? And that kind of leaves us at this point of how do I scan things? How do I pre-screen? If I'm a smaller MSP, that's probably the owner or a manager. You do not have time to sit there and go through hundreds of resumes. It's a waste of time. And it's disrespectful to people who are seriously applying to get sit and either not counted or, your fatigue when you do get to their resume.
Okay, so
I was taking a break so you could ask questions because I talk too much.
Well, this is why I bring people on, though, because I bring people on who are experts who can share their knowledge with the All Things MSP audience. Now, that to most people could seem like very stressful and like, how do I handle that onslaught of resumes? Because there's got to be a way to quickly identify the keepers versus the posers.
You're exactly correct. So this is going to be the one part of the process where you need to be, in terms of your inner moral compass, you need to go into ambiguous gray territory and remove your emotions for a moment. I want you to have emotions when you're posting the job description. I want you to have emotions when you're interviewing. I want your culture to come through. At the first screening is the only time you are going to be a soulless robot for a minute. Pure shopping cart trolley morality when you're going through this. The person who returns the card is objectively good. The person who doesn't is just should have been Thanos snapped off the earth. Like, you got to be in that mindset for a little while, because you only get at most 2 minutes per resume to review. If you're taking more than that at this stage, you're doing it wrong. You basically, we talked about before, those 5 critical bullet points that really make up the type of person that you want to come work for you. You're looking for things that support that, combined with you're looking for indicators of somebody who is making an effort. And in most cases, for most of us, because we're typically not going to be hiring an extremely high level, $150,000 person, you're looking for indicators on a resume that show you somebody is in a position where you would be elevating their station in life by allowing them to have a career they could build at your company. And that's usually pretty quick and easy to spot on a resume. So a couple of things I would look. You pull up that resume quickly. Is there a link on that resume to a LinkedIn, GitHub, portfolio, profile, whatever? Just basically, did this person publicly allow you to figure out who they were with no effort more on your part? That is a check plus. Did they put any sort of cover letter in place, even if it is clearly written by ChatGPT? Check plus. As you look through their resume very quickly, I don't care how long they're in jobs for. We're not deep analyzing it right now. Do they have a series of work or education history that tells some sort of story? That does not have to be a positive story. Just, is there a story there? My favorite example would be delivery driver, pizza cook, assistant manager, want a new job. That tells a great story right there. So is it telling a story? Resume gaps can be part of a story and should not be a reason not to consider somebody. And then lastly, you just want to quickly scan their schooling, certs, anything they highlighted. Does any of it remotely fall in the Venn diagram of technology? I don't care if it's relevant right now. That's it. And if those criteria are met, which are very simple, that goes temporarily into a yes pile. If those criteria are not met, it goes into a no pile. And that's a final no. And you may be missing out on, the lost treasure of the Sierra Madre that way, but you got 200 resumes you got to go through. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One other thing I would point out, if you are using a system that lets you track if someone's applied before, and you've gone through that criteria, and this is someone who has applied before that you have not rejected out of the interview process or a hiring process, just a resume you've never considered before, that
Right.
also goes in the yes pile. That's persistence. So very quick scan through that. That's it. That should take you less than 2 minutes, and use a little button in Indeed for yes or no. And don't feel bad about the no. It's going to feel gross the first few times. Just get over it. Just nope, 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 nope. And you want to get it down to like less, depending on what you're hiring for, I don't know, 30, 40 resumes top. You're going to weed it down more, but somewhere around there, like a manageable amount.
Okay, so we've done the first screening. What's the second screening look like?
So now you're going to want to go through and read all those resumes and analyze them and you know, get all FBI or CSI Miami on them, but that could be a waste of time at this point. Indeed does set itself up where employers can spam post and applicants can spam apply. And even though you've weeded out people that at face value might be aligned, we don't really know that they want to work for you, that they're real. So utilize, listen, we're all introverted. Utilize the freaking chat feature inside Indeed. There's no need to call anybody or schedule an appointment, and nobody has time for that. There is a chat feature built in, and this does a few things for you. First of all, it's non-confrontational. It allows you to create basically sequences in Indeed, so you can just paste block sequences if you want. But also that person has to be paying attention to their Indeed mail set up to their own email. So if they're not, if you use that live chat and about one business day later they haven't responded, they're not that motivated to get a job right now. Because if they were, they would be watching that inbox like a hawk. So that's a really important passive tool to just see how interested is this person in being employed. Simple questions. You basically want to restate the premise of the role in a sentence and ask them in very friendly, natural language for you. If that is a role that sounds like it is a good fit for them, you are looking for a yes or no answer. Next question is you want to ask them. In fact, don't ask them. Restate the salary range. And if you have hours or anything, you know, kind of weird, like a, you know, any sort of weird thing, like it's a 1099 or it's a weekend shift or anything like that, state that as well and ask them if that aligns with their goals. Because you're going to use that a little bit later. That's twice now they should have been told how much they're going to get paid to work at your company. You've summed all that up. If there are any stressors, gotchas, or unknowns, which in this case, because you're an MSP, there are, it's drinking from a fire hose, some sort of sentence that explains that like this is a very fast pace, managing a lot of clients. You really need to be on your toes, learning. How does that sound to you? And once again, what you're basically doing is you're creating an accountability loop so that if you move this person over to an interview, you have already directly asked them, does the job as explained sound like it fits you? Does what I'm willing to pay you align with your goals? Does any stressors that I know are part of this, having told you that, does that fit with how your brain works, that excite you? And if they said yes 3 times, and you now ask these questions again on your first interview, and they are not answering yes, this is not a person we're going to hire, my friends, because they've whether it was intentional or not, they've misrepresented that information. They were not paying attention. They were not genuinely interacting with you during the screening. And we want someone who's making that effort. They have that desire. They want not necessarily to work for Eric, but they have a desire to get a job doing this, to build a career, to do something. You want somebody that's in it to win it from the beginning, because you are. And so this helps you set up a little bit of an accountability loop through that screening. I generally then like to end the screening question with a very clear statement that explains our hiring process. That's a huge differentiator if you're hiring. Employers don't do that, especially large companies. They waste your time. Tell somebody how it works and be as honest as you want. Hey, we do 2 interviews. I am reviewing 40 candidates. I am in the pre-screening phase right now. It may be a month before I have an answer for you. How does that sound? People who want to work for you right away, they're going to be like, wow, literally no one has ever spoken to me that way. This person is treating me with a level of respect I've never been treated with before in a hiring process. If they're interested, now they're really interested. If they were on the fence, now they're thinking about this, and they're thinking about you versus their other dance partners, being like, huh, this is the only one that's kind of treated me like I'm special so far. And if they were on the fence the other way, this is where they're going to dip out and be like, let me think about it, or I don't know, or that may not work for me. And you've given them a nice soft way to exit without feeling gross.
Yeah. And I think it depends a lot on personality. I think that defaulting to letting them know where they are in the process, how the process works, is good for everybody, because it's setting expectations, right? And if you set expectations and then they follow through on those expectations, you know that there's somebody who can pick up on what you're putting down.
Well, and reframe that for a second. Remember, this whole thing is about hiring the right kind of person for your organization. If one of your values is proper expectations management, which you're an MSP, it is, well, you're going to expect them to live that behavior. And what you're doing right now is you're proving to them before they work for you that you're good for your word, that what you're going to ask them to do is how you run your business. This is a literal demonstration of that. You're establishing a pattern of trust and credibility, which is going to buy you some currency from them that if they make it forward, you can spend in their first few months. So it works the other way as well. You are basically showing you have integrity by behaving this way.
Yeah, and it's a huge differentiator because there are a lot of places out there that are hiring even large corporations that don't do that. Like they will get you to that point and then just ghost you.
They will. It has happened.
Yeah.
And by the way, LinkedIn chat with those, you can create the, not LinkedIn, I'm sorry, Indeed chat. You can create the pre-populated messages. You can do the same thing for rejection. Your rejections to people you're not interviewing do not need to be grandiose. They can be very, very simple and very contrite. You know, we've moved in a different direction. Thank you for applying. You know, that's it. And you can automate that so you don't have to feel bad about clicking the button. Just in case anybody here wasn't aware.
Yeah. And this is a place where tools do come in handy.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, it does save you time, and time is a killer when it comes to hiring, and you need to do it efficiently.
Depending on your size organization, at this point, how they've answered, I would consider the process that you're going to run into at a more either mature organization or an organization that has sufficient time. I like a multi-round interview process, a quick sort of culture interview, and then a more job-specific interview. If you're smaller or it's just you, then that does need to be condensed into one interview. But I say all of this because from this point forward, you've already spent some time and money of basically opportunity cost doing this. That is going to increase from this point forward. So anyone from this point forward we want to move forward with, we are spending money, whether we hire them or not. This is time and money. You could not be doing something else that has to have value. And you want to be in that mindset as you then decide who you're going to offer some sort of an interview to. So this is the point based on the screening questions and their responses where I would go back to all the ones that passed your vibe check and really take a better look at their resume and analyze it. And there's no one way to do this, but sort of a general tip I would give: hire the most entry-level person you can for the role, meaning that the role may not be an entry-level role, but hire the most entry-level version of someone who is qualified for that role. You basically, my non-PC version of this, I don't want your ex-girlfriend's way of rubbing my back when she becomes my girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like I want her to learn how I want it. I don't want the way Eric wants it. And in the same way, yes, sorry, it's a little politically incorrect, but in the same way with hiring, like I don't want someone else's 5-year trained tier 2 MSP technician, because there'd be baggage there and processes and ideas and opinions, and I don't have time for that. And we already talked about at the beginning, you don't have the natural skill set to reprogram that person anyways, most likely. So look for somebody who is qualified but would be entry level. If it's a higher level or like a tier 2 or tier 3, find that tier 1.5 who has not been promoted because there's no room, who wants to move up. If it's a tier 3, maybe find that person who has been an escalation resource or a field tech for a while and is sick of it and just wants to go and do high level work in a chair in a dark room, but has never actually done that in any appreciable way somewhere yet. Yeah, it's going to make your life easier.
I learned that the hard way in my MSP by hiring people that I thought were going to be great because they had more experience. And I ended up starting to hire my tier 1s from the community college because it's much easier to populate a blank slate than it is to reprogram somebody who has already thinks they know how to do it.
And if you look, we'll give the analogy again back to sports. It does work out sometimes. If you take a star player from another team who has had a history of being a star there, and Tom Brady. My feelings are hurt about this. He went to Tampa Bay, and what happened immediately? They were the best team on earth for a year. It's like sometimes that happens. Most of the time, that is not what happens. That type of a person on a new team either has a pretty rough first season and then a middling level of success. If that, we tend to now see in a lot of sports teams, it's far more likely that unless somebody is that known superstar quantity, that we'll go and recruit from a farm team or a lower level, or, you know, a relief pitcher or a backup quarterback or an assistant coach. That same idea. Because remember, part of this, we are enabling somebody's career. We are allowing, by them working for us, we are elevating their station in life in a way that they were being blocked from previously. There is an immense amount of stickiness in that feeling. There's an immediate sense of loyalty, and there's an immediate sense of feeling like, this is awesome. Thank you, Eric. And that's good. You want that, and you want it to be real. And these types of people who are entry level for the role usually fall into that category.
Yeah, you know, it's really amazing to me how much more, and Sarah mentioned this in the chat, that how much more loyal these people are to you when you hire them at that level, invest in them, and grow them with your business to the next level. It definitely helps with retention.
It does. And this is not to say that experienced people are bad. They're not. It's most of us aren't equipped to absorb them immediately into our organizations in a way that is fair and equitable for both. If you are, by all means, hire that experienced person. But if you're hiring somebody whose fair market value is $110,000 now, and their current job is paying them 85, you paying them 90 isn't a gracious thing. And very soon they're going to be looking at you being like, where's my money? So somebody who's at the upper end, the upper banding of their career level, if you're not ready to immediately absorb and accommodate that properly, it likely will produce a worse outcome for you. Not always, but it likely will. And then both people have their feelings hurt. They're disappointed. We both wasted our time. Why do that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dean, we are coming close to the end of a whole hour here on All Things MSP Live. And really do appreciate, you know, all of the nuggets that you have dropped in tonight's episode when it comes to hiring. And we didn't even get that far into the process.
We didn't.
And all of this stuff was gold. I really do appreciate it. If people are interested in learning more about hiring, where can they find out some more educational content?
So I work for 𝗵𝗵. And we are an LMS and educational and accountability platform for MSP. So you can come over to 𝗵𝗵. But funnily enough, we don't really have a lot of on-platform content about hiring right now. I'm working on that. Send me an email. This is one of those things that I look at. It's the same mission and vision 𝗵𝗵 had, same mission I had at Help, same mission I had at my MSP. Every human that I've ever hired in this industry, my goal has been to turn them into the best possible version of themselves and have them understand that. I want every employee that works for me to understand how marketable they are, how good they are, how desirable they are, and where their career is and how much I've limited it. Because then my job every day is to convince them to keep working for me. And their job every day is to keep being excellent. If you can manage that kind of relationship in your company, you will have people that work for you because they want to, not because they have to. You won't always get along. They won't always be perfect, but that generally sets everybody up for success. If I can help any of you arrive at that, that helps the entire industry. So please do not be quiet. Sarah's in the chat here. Sarah is a professional recruiter with decades of experience. Sarah would be happy to give you some tips. I know for a fact there are plenty of other people like that in our channel, because we recognize that the more the entire channel has a better pool of available people that can work for all of us, and the better we all get at treating them right, we won't have people leaving our industry to go be sysadmins. We won't have this drain we're having. None of us want that. I want people to stay in MSP, and I want them to be good. I want them to be expensive. And I want MSP owners to be like, how am I going to afford this amazing person? Because then they got to get motivated to make their business better. And then what ends up happening is suddenly 5-10 years later, you have, $10-20 million business. And you're like, hey, look what happened here. So anybody who wants help with this, hit me up. Happy to help you. It helps all of us.
Yeah, and that's really what we try and do. There's so many people in the MSP channel, and one of the things that makes us unique is that so many people are out here willing to help other people for no reason other than just goodwill, right? And yeah, sometimes people charge for it, but that's because we all got to put food on the table, right? But there's so much just great help out there, and I encourage everybody here to check out all of the content over at 𝘰𝗵𝘃, because that's just a great group of people over there putting together great content for this community, and really appreciate what you guys do. And Dean, thanks so much for sharing all of that tonight and being willing to come on the show.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I hope that we did not embarrass Uncle Marv in the chat, and I hope that I did not get you a cease and desist. I tried to be nice this time.
I think you accomplished. I do not think we raised it to the level of one of your spicy Mondays.
Well, another one, you have to have me back, and I will tell you who the bad recruiters are in our channel, and then we'll get ourselves in trouble.
And then I should point out that you do a Friendship Friday as well.
Yes. So this goes back to what I was saying before, that mission of there's more excellent people in this industry than there are non-excellent people. There are more people that return the shopping cart than don't. And a lot of those people have not self-identified that they are decent, good people that deserve to be here, have earned where they are, and belong where they are. They doubt themselves. They don't feel welcome. They don't think this space is for them. It absolutely is for you. And Friendship Friday is just a little way to maybe get some people to think critically about the fact that you belong in this industry. We're lucky to have you here. Thank you for being here. And if you get that vibe and you tell one other person that, and then they feel a little bit better, I know that sounds a little bit like a Bob Ross, painting class, but I really do think that helps. There's just so many, and back to hiring, there are so many people that will not apply because they just don't think they're worth it.
Yep.
We reach one
I'm
of those
people. Close it with this. I'm just going to say that if you're one of those people who is not sure that you should be sharing your expertise, yeah, you probably should. And if you want to do it on this show, we're always looking for guests.
Love that.
So hit me up, Eric@allthingsmsp.com. And Dean, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. So one last pitch for Uncle Marv's live stream tonight. He is doing a 2025 Merry New Year. And that is going to be it for us. Have a great evening, folks. Hey, thanks for watching All Things MSP Live. You can reach me, Eric Anthony, at eric@allthingsmsp.com. If you're a guest, if you're a vendor, if you want to sponsor the show, let me know.